Okay, so let's start from where we stopped. And this is the place. Actually, this was the last phrase that I read, right? So let's continue here. I want to at least finish all this. Not so much, not so little, also, but let's keep going and let's see if we can do it. Maybe 1 hour and more, or more, I don't know. Let's see. None of this would have happened without technology, and cinema is in fact unique as an art form in being defined by its technological character. This first section of part 1 of this book, The Early Years, therefore begins with the technical and material developments that brought the cinema into being and helped rapidly to turn it into a major art form. In these early years, this art form was quite primitive and so uncertain of its future development. It also took some time before the cinema acquired its character as a predominantly narrative and fictional medium. We have therefore divided the history of the first 2 decades of cinema into two: an early period proper, up to about 1905, and a transitional period up to the emergence of the feature film shortly before the First World War, during which the cinema began to acquire that character as a form of narrative spectacle which has principally defined it ever since. None of this, nada disso, would have happened. Então aqui, né? Iria ter, teria acontecido without, sem technology. And cinema is in fact unique, único, right? As an art form in being defined by its technological character, a personagem tecnológica, personalidade, característica tecnológica, right? The first section, primeira seção of part 1, the early years, os primeiros anos, basicamente. Poderia ser the first years também. Therefore, portanto, begins with the technical and material developments that brought, que trouxeram, que é o passado de bring, trazer, brought the cinema into being, help rapidly to turn it into. Então, esse to turn it into é que transformar isso numa forma de arte principal. Vamos ver aqui. It helped, ajudou rapidamente a transformá-lo. Então aqui, ó, turn it into, transformar o cinema em, né? Turn it into, uma grande forma de arte. Então esse aqui, ó, esse major aqui representa a big, grande, a big art form. Major, só que o major aqui é tipo meio que principal também, é grande principal, né? Algo que tem um grande destaque, né? In these, então nestes, né? Early years, this form was quite, de certa forma, quite primitive. Vamos ver aqui. Acho que não vai dar de certa forma, né? Esse quite aqui tem uma intensidade grande, aparentemente. Eu nunca interpreto ele como essa intensidade tão grande como diz aqui, né? Mas enfim, aqui aparece como bastante. Quite. Beleza, vamos interpretar então como bastante de uma vez. And uncertain, incerto, of its future development. It also took some time before the cinema adquiriu its character, personalidade, né? Seu caráter, as a predominantly narrative and fictional medium, meio de ficção, né? Meio ficcional. We have therefore, de novo aqui, né? Therefore, portanto, divided the history for 2 decades of cinema into 2. The early period proper. Esse proper aqui. Próprio, né? Adequado, apropriado, também como próprio. Of the required type suitable or appropriate. Wait a bit. I don't have my Cambridge opened. Let's see here the definition. Right or suitable for a particular situation or purpose. Suitable. What's suitable exactly? Acceptable or right for someone or something. Beleza. Suitable. Apropriado, né? Esse proper aqui. Então aqui, up to about. Seria até cerca de 1905, né? Up to about 19 ou 0, 5. Tá? Então quando tem um 0 aqui, nos primeiros anos, né? Vai ter o 0. Os primeiros anos do século, né? Então aqui a gente fala ou. 1905. Se fosse outro número aqui, ia ser também, né? 1901, 1902, etc. Ou 1905. Mas geralmente em datas divide aqui nas dezenas, né? 19 primeiro. Se tiver um 0, fala ou. E aí o 5. And transitional period, período de transição, up to the emergence of the feature film. Até a chegada, up to the emergence of the feature film. Vamos ver aqui o que aparece no Google Translate. Até o surgimento do longa-metragem. Up to emergence. Up to the emergence.
Up to the emergence of the feature film.
Beleza? Before the First World War, during which, durante o qual. Vamos ver o que aparece. During which. Durante o qual. Cinema began. Passado de begin, né? Began to acquire. Acquire de novo aqui. Adquirir. Character as a form of narrative spectacle which has principally defined it ever since. Beleza. The watershed. Vou voltar pro. Vou fazer assim, eu vou falar o britânico quando eu leio pela primeira vez, depois quando eu for ler de novo para explicar as coisas, eu volto pro americano. The watershed came with the First World War, which definitely sealed American hegemony. Oh my god. At least in the mainstream of development. The second section, the rise of Hollywood, looks first at Hollywood itself in the 1910s and 1920s and the way the Hollywood system operated as an integrated industry, controlling all aspects of cinema from production to exhibition. The international ramifications of America's rise to dominance are considered next. By 1914, the cinema was a truly worldwide business, with films being made and shown throughout the industrialized world. But It was a business in which the levers of power were operated from afar, first in Paris and London, and then increasingly in New York and Hollywood. And it is impossible to understand the development of world cinema without recognizing the effect that control of international distribution had on nascent or established industry elsewhere. Ok, mando algumas dúvidas aqui de pronúncia, né? Essa aqui foi a última dúvida que veio.
Nascent.
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 Nascent. Only recently formed or started, but likely to grow larger quickly. Então, nascente, né? Mas com esse potencial de crescimento. Essa palavra aqui, hegemony. Será que é assim? Hegemony. Vamos ver. Será que tem um...
Hegemony. 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 Hegemony.
Hegemony.
Ah, hegemony. Não sou esse H com som de R, não.
Hegemony.
Hegemony. Hegemony.
Hegemony.
Hã?
Hegemony.
Hegemony. Parece que tem um Rzinho assim.
Hegemony.
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 Ah, isso tá difícil de perceber. Hegemony. Hegemonia. Um aqui então. Esse aqui também, né? Watershed. Watershed.
Watershed.
Watershed.
Watershed.
Watershed. Watershed. An event or period that is important because it represents a big change in how people do or think about something. Então, aquele momento de mudança de pensamento. Em português, qual que seria essa palavra? Aquele momento crucial, será? Não. Watershed. Bacia hidrográfica, né? Mas, an event or period marking a turning point. Mudança, um momento de mudança. In a course of action, states of affairs, watershed. Vamos pegar um trecho do próprio The Watershed. Vamos ver. O divisor de águas. Aquele momento divisor de águas. The watershed. The division of waters came with the war, which definitivamente selou a hegemonia americana, at least, ao menos, in the mainstream of development. The second section, the rise of Hollywood, né, the rise, como é que a gente traduz isso? Meio que os caras alavancada, ascensão, ok, isso mesmo. O que aconteceu aqui? Não é nome próprio. The Rise. Mas ascensão, apareceu ali pelo menos por uns segundos, né? Looks first at Hollywood itself. Aqui, né? 1910s, 1920s. Tem esse Szinho aqui para falar que é da década de 10, década de 20, né? Nos anos 10, nos anos 20, todo esse período, toda essa década, né? Tem esse Szinho para representar isso. And the way the Hollywood system operated as an integrated industry, controlling all aspects of cinema, exhibition, ramification, rise de novo aqui, ascensão, para a dominância, are considered next, são considerados depois, basicamente, né? Depois dessa parte ali que eles estão falando da sessão, né? Aí só vai explicando como é que eles estão dividindo aqui esse livro, né? Was truly worldwide business. Filmes being made, sendo feitos e mostrados throughout, ao redor, né? Todo ali o mundo industrializado. But it was a business in which the levers of power, as alavancas de poder, were operated from afar. De longe, né? Afar. Operadas de longe, vamos ver. From or at a great distance. De uma grande distância. Okay. And then increasingly, né? Aumentosamente, no caso aqui, né? Increasingly. Aqui a gente poderia traduzir isso aqui de maneira bonita. De maneira crescente e cada vez mais. And then increasingly, cada vez mais. And it is impossible to understand the development of world cinema without recognizing, sem reconhecer aqui, né? Without recognizing that control of international distribution had on nascent elsewhere, em outros lugares. Ok. As far as European cinema was concerned, the war provoked a crisis that was not merely economic. Not only did European exporters such as France, Britain, and Italy lose control over overseas markets and find their own markets opened up to increasingly powerful American competition, but the whole cultural climate changed in the aftermath of war. The triumph of Hollywood in the 1920s, was a triumph of the new world over the old, marking the emergence of the canons of modern American mass culture, not only in America but in countries as yet uncertain how to receive it. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, até onde o cinema europeu estava preocupado, vamos ver o que fala aqui. Legal essa expressão aqui, as far as. No que diz respeito tá. Mas tem uma expressão tipo as far as I'm concerned. No que me diz respeito. Não sei como usar essa frase aqui, na real. As far as I'm concerned. Aí a pessoa vai. Tinha que ver uma frase com isso. As far as I'm concerned, thank you is a load of rubbish, na minha opinião. Então pega aqui, na minha opinião. Children come first, na minha opinião. Na opinião, então, da Inglaterra, né? As far as European cinema was concerned, na opinião da cinema europeu. The war provocou a crisis that was not merely, não foi meramente economic. Not only, não apenas did European exportadores, such as, tais como, que France, Britain, Italy, lose control over overseas markets. Então aqui, Italy lose control, perdeu o controle do mercado de fora, né, do outro lado lá da baía, no caso overseas, né, que tem que passar o mar para chegar ali, falando. Na verdade, esse overseas ele entra num termo assim de exteriores, né, países, outros países que não sejam eles ali, né. Vamos ver aqui. Italy lose control sobre os países internacionais, overseas markets. Então esse overseas aqui pegou como internacional, international markets. Então todos os países que não sejam ali o deles. And find their own markets opened up to increasingly, aquele cada vez mais poderosos, powerful, poderosos, cada vez mais, uma competição cada vez mais, open up to increasingly powerful. Então, competidor americano cada vez mais poderoso. Essa é a tradução. But the whole, inteira, completa. But the whole cultural climate, mas toda o clima cultural, né? Climate aqui, clima. Changed, mudou in the aftermath of war. Então, aftermath seria o resultado da guerra, no caso, né? Como é que ficou, né? As coisas ficaram depois. Vamos ver aqui. The period that follows an unpleasant event or accident and the effects that it causes. Então é bem uma ideia ruim, né?
Aftermath.
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 Então assim, depois de um acontecimento ruim. Vamos ver aqui. The aftermath. Rescaldo. What? Tem que ser muito bom no português para saber essa palavra. Mas aftermath aqui é bem comum no inglês, né? Deixa eu ver se eu botar um ponto aqui muda uma coisa. Não. The triumph, o triunfo of Hollywood in the 20s was a triumph of the new world over the old. Então, do novo mundo em cima do velho mundo. Making the emergence, surgimento, of the canons, canhões mesmo? Não.
Canon.
Canon.
Christian priest with special duties in the cathedral. Totalmente a rule, principle, or law, especially in the Christian church. The writings or other works that are generally agreed to be good, important, and worth study. Aí a gente faz assim, né? A gente copia aqui e cola lá, né? Pra ter uma ideia. Surgimento dos cânones. Eu tô pegando umas palavras que eu nem sei em português hoje, minha senhora. Tipo de composição polifônica, peça de música. Provavelmente essa coisa que falou de regras aqui antes. Princípios, regras, leis. Deve ser isso, né? Tipo, que constitui uma cultura, né? Of modern American mass culture, not only in America but in countries as yet uncertain. As yet uncertain. Ai, cara. Ainda incertos. As yet concerned. Tá, esse aqui valeu pro ainda, mas só esse aqui já vale o ainda, né? Mas aqui é na construção dessa frase, que eu não uso muito desse jeito aqui, então fiquei perdidinho aqui. Enfim, entendeu, entendi, né? At least I understood. Beleza. Early cinema programs were a hodgepodge of items, mainly actualities, comic sketches, freestanding narratives, serial episodes, and the occasional trick or animated film. With the coming of the feature-length narrative as centerpiece of the program, other types of film were relegated to a secondary position or forced to find alternative viewing contexts. This did not in fact hinder their development, but tended rather to reinforce their distinct identities. The making of animated cartoons became a separate branch of filmmaking, generally practiced outside the major studios, and the same was true of serials. Together with new reels, reel. What's going on here? What's this word all about?
Newsreel.
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 A short film that consists of news reports, usually one that was made in the past for showing in a movie theater. Both cartoons and serial episodes tended to be shown as short items in a program culminating in the feature, though some of Louis Feuillard's serials in France could fill a whole program, and there were occasional attempts at feature-length animation. So let me take a look here. Porque a gente tem assim, né? A gente tem um program normal, né? Será que tem uma diferença entre os dois?
Program.
Program.
A series of instructions that can be put into a computer in order to make it perform an operation. Agora a gente vê isso aqui, program. Ah, ok, it's just...
Program.
Então a mesma coisa, só que é versão UK, né? Esse livro é de lá, Oxford, Universidade da Inglaterra, né? Então, ok. Of the genres emerging out of the early cinema, however, it was really only slapstick comedy that successfully developed in both short and feature format, while Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton made a successful transition to features in the early 20s. The majority of silent comedians, including Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, built their careers in the silent period almost entirely around the short film. I'm just gonna search some words here. Just the ones that I really don't know. Hodgepodge.
Hodgepodge.
A mutton stew with mixed vegetables. Seria tipo um caldeirão de um sopão, né? Cheio de coisa misturada. Hodgepodge. Tem que falar a variant of hodgepodge.
Hodgepodge.
Confused mixture, uma mistura confusa. Mingling actualities. Tem muitas palavras aqui que apareceram nesse parágrafo, principalmente, que eu não tenho muita certeza. Mingle. Também
Mingle.
Mingle.
to mix or combine, or be mixed or combined, né? De misturar, né? Let me see. Freestanding narratives. Acho que é narrativas livres aqui, né? Freestanding. Freestanding. Standing alone and not attached to a wall. que são livres, né? Por independentes, vamos dizer, né? The occasional truque, or animated film. Relegate. Relegate é meio que subordinado, talvez? Algo assim, não? É, mais ou menos. To put someone or something into a lower or less important rank or position. É rebaixar, talvez, né? Mas rebaixar assim, não... rebaixar de posição, assim, no sentido de... rebaixando alguém, assim, humilhando, né? Tipo, o cara acaba perdendo o rank ali, né? Relegated. This did not in fact hinder. Hinder. What's the meaning of hinder? Ele quer prejudicar, será? Não. To limit the ability of someone to do something or to limit the development of something. Então, limitar. They hindered my... atrapalharam my development. Atrapalharam meu desenvolvimento. They hindered. Eu só ouvi aqui, né?
hinder, hinder,
Hinder.
hinder,
Aqui parece que não tá sendo o R, o H no som do H, né? Hinder. Mas é pra ser assim, né? Hinder the development, but tended rather to reinforce, mas tendiam, ao invés disso, reforçar their distinct identities, as identidades distintas. Separate branch. Branch seria um galho, vertente. É uma vertente separada, eu acho, né? Vamos ver aqui. Animated cartoons became a separate branch. Se tornaram um ramo separado. Legal, ramo, né? Ramo. Filmmaking. Outside, fora dos maiores estúdios. And the same was true of serials. Serial. Não sei o que estão querendo dizer com serial aqui. Aqui já falou de serial killer. Broadcast or published in several separate parts. É tipo meio que um seriado, né? Com vários capítulos. Pra estar sempre botando, tipo... Same was true of series. Tipo, a gente fala series. Aqui tá serious, mas acho que é a mesma coisa. Ou algo parecido. Together with news, reels. Algo relacionado com notícias. Tendiam a ser mostrados. Tended to be shown as short items in a program. Culminating in a feature. Tô cansando aqui já de... no recurso, culminando no recurso. Feature, essa ideia de recursos também. Though, embora que, although, só though aqui na verdade, né? Though, embora que. Blá 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 blá. Vou pular tudo agora. Chegou o momento de leitura intensa, tá? Não vou mais pensar muito nas traduções não, porque está cansando meu cérebro. You didn't even play Valorant yesterday. Oh, Nilo. So nice to have you here, right, man? Actually, I played Valorant, but I didn't stream. You know? I forgot to stream. I started playing with my friend, and then we played like 3 competitive games. It was like almost 2 hours of playing, but I forgot to stream, you know? But I was playing, I was practicing. But I want to play tonight, and then I will be like sharp, you know? Neil, you can understand everything I say? It's easy for you to understand when I'm speaking? more or less. Oh, it's kind of good, man. Everything I say, you kind of understand. You kind of understand, like, almost all the context, at least. It seems like, right? You know, man. Let's practice speaking someday. Conversation. Let's get into a room, like Discord or Zoom or some other video conference room. And let's practice speaking someday. What do you think about that? Would you like to do that? So meanwhile, let me continue here. The section, the silent film, looks at the kinds of film like animation, comedy, and serials, which continue to thrive. Just do like that. Continue to thrive alongside the dramatic feature in the 1920s, and also at the factual film or documentary, which acquired an increasing distinctiveness as the period progressed, and at the rise of avant-garde filmmaking parallel and sometimes counter to the mainstream. Both documentary and the avant-garde achieved occasional commercial successes. Robert Flaherty's Nanook of the North ran for several months in a cinema in Paris. Aqui só tá falando do filme, né? Ran for several months seria, né, que foi passado, né, ficou rodando lá por muitos meses no cinema de Paris. And works by French impressionist filmmakers like Jean Epstein and Germain Dulac also attracted substantial audiences. On the whole, aqui no todo, no geral, né, on the whole, however, documentary and the avant-garde were non-commercial forms, with values distinct from the mainstream and a cultural and political role that cannot be assessed, medido, que não pode ser medido, assessed, in commercial terms. The film avant-garde had an important place in the modernist art movements of the 20s, especially in France, with Fernand Léger, Marcel Duchamp, and Man Ray, I don't know. But also in Germany. Então aqui, mas também, né? But also in Germany and the Soviet Union. And this modernist impulse was to animate documentary both in the 1920s, Ziga Vertov in the Soviet Union, Walter Ruttmann in Germany, and after, e depois. Okay. Of the countries which developed and managed to make sustentar distinctive national cinemas in the silent period, the most important were France, Germany, and the Soviet Union. Of these, the French cinema displayed the most continuity in spite of the crisis provoked by the war and economic uncertainties of the post-war period. Então aqui, in spite of, seria apesar da crise, aqui, in spite of the crisis, in spite of, apesar de, apesar da, apesar do. The German cinema, by contrast, relatively insignificant in the pre-war years, exploded onto the world scene with the expressionist cabinet of Dr. Caligari in 1919 and throughout the Weimar period succeeded in harnessing a wide spectrum of artistic energies into new cinematic forms. Então só isso aqui, harness. What's the meaning of harness? Not sure, don't remember that well. Harness.
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 A piece of equipment with straps and belts usually used to control or hold a place a person. Não. Ali no texto estava que nem um verbo, né? Succeed in harnessing. Tipo um verbo. Então, vamos ver a forma aqui do verbo. As a verb,
harness,
to put a harness on a horse or to connect a horse to a vehicle using a harness. Então, é um objeto. E aí você transforma esse objeto num verbo. Tá bom, então. This is a harness. Ou para você conectar e levar alguma coisa, né? No caso aqui do cachorro, ele ia levar tipo alguma coisa junto. No caso do cavalo também, né? Vamos ver aqui. Horse harness. Para segurar junto com a carriage, né? Carruagem. Tipo isso. Let me see here, Nilo, your messages. Do you playing Among Us? I have Discord only for games. Where do you find these books? Usually, these books I find on like Pirate Bay, torrent websites, basically. I don't have Among Us. I wish I could buy it. It's so cheap, actually, right? It's a good game, right? To stream here also, right? There's this other good game here, Fall Guys. Have you played this game? Do you like this game? In Among Us Steam. How much? $4 on Steam. Ten reals, actually. Should I buy it? Do you think it's a good option? It's a good choice to buy it? Yeah, it's for free on cell phone, right? Actually, I downloaded. I have it here on my cell phone. But if I want to stream, it's kind of hard, right? To stream on my cell phone at least, because my cell phone is not that good, you know? Okay, let me just keep going here. Harnessed. É lá, tipo, carregar, né? Então, carregando, né? Se deram bem, no caso, né? Succeeded em carregar esse grande espectro de energias artísticas para essas novas formas cinemáticas. Oh my god. Even more spectacular was the emergence of the Soviet cinema after the revolution of 1917. The new Soviet cinema resolutely, what's that? Em português, decididamente. E aqui, how is the sound of it?
resolutely,
resolutely,
In a determined way, de um jeito determinado. Tipo determinado ali, né? Uma característica. Resolutely turn its back on the past, leaving the style of the pre-war Russian cinema to be perpetuated by the many emigres who fled westwards to escape the revolution. The section on national cinemas gives separate treatment to all three elements: the pre-revolutionary Russian cinema, recently rediscovered, the Soviet cinema, and the Russian émigrés. Provavelmente imigrantes aqui, émigrés. Deve ser francês também. Émigré. The other countries whose cinemas merit an article of their own is in this part are Britain, which had an interesting but relatively undistinguished history in the silent period, Italy, which had a brief moment, então breve aqui, né? Breve momento of international fame just before the war. Scandinavian countries, mainly Denmark and Sweden, which played a role in the development of silent cinema, quite out of proportion, bastante fora de proporção, to their small populations, né? Comparado ali, né, com as suas pequenas populações. Então eles se destacaram bastante, apesar de não ter muita gente nessas regiões, né? In Japan, where a cinema developed based on traditional theatrical and other art forms and only gradually adapted to Western influence. Space is also given to the unique phenomenon of the transnational Swedish cinema, which flourished in Eastern and Central Europe in the interwar years. Swedish é tipo finlandês? Maybe? Não. Da onde que é essa galera? Ah, a language used by Jews in Central and Eastern Europe before the Holocaust. Então era uma não sei se era um dialeto germânico, uma mistura de hebraico. Ah, então era a galera que era judeu, né? Pessoal judaico. Which flourished in the Eastern and Central Europe in the interwar years. Interwar seria durante a guerra? Ah, tá, inter. Então aqueles períodos entre uma guerra e outra. Beleza. For most of... Agora eu vou mudar um pouco, vou fazer um sotaque britânico agora, beleza? No, I don't speak French, really. Not yet, I'm practicing. I watch a lot of videos and I listen a lot to French. And I kind of try to read in French too. I can read in French, kind of. Je peux parler un peu de français, je peux lire un peu de français, mais j'ai pas de vocabulaire de pas parler français bien. Tipo isso. Mas assim, meu sotaque, ele ainda não se adaptou, sabe? Tipo, eu consigo formular alguma coisa, sabe? Mas assim, se eu vou mais além, aí já cria uma barreira, né? Aí eu falo essas palavrinhas assim mais de boa, sabe? Mas eu já consigo pensar um pouco em francês, só tipo, eu não treinei o suficiente ainda pra conseguir, tipo, ter confiança em falar, sabe? Então aqui, vamos lá. Fazer um sotaque mais britânico agora. For most of these articles, the period covered is from the earliest days up to the introduction of synchronized sound at the end of the 1920s. For the German cinema, however, the cutoff point is the Nazi takeover in 1933. Takeover seria que os nazistas ali, eles dominaram a região, né? Takeover, vamos ver o que você fala aqui. Takeover. Assumir o controle. Nice. For similar reasons, the story of Swedish cinema is carried up to 1939, when it was brutally terminated by the Holocaust. In the case of Japan, only the years up to the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 are covered in this part, and the later development of silent cinema in Japan, which went on well into the 1930s, is dealt with in part 2. Então aqui, dealt with, é lidado, né? Eles mencionam esses assuntos na parte 2, tá? Vamos ver aqui como é que aparece no... Acho que se vai aparecer, é tratado, legal as palavras. Tudo bem. Is dealt with. Beleza. Quase lá então. Quase lá. Encerrar aqui, parar aqui. The early years. Que vai começar a ficar mais interessante, talvez. Não que aqui não esteja interessante, né? Mas talvez lá fique mais. Silent cinema is strictly speaking a misnomer. Oh. Então vamos parar aqui nessa parte só explicar. Strictly speaking. Eu acabei de ver o significado desse strictly speaking, agora eu não lembro. Mas eu sei que eu sei o significado. É quando você quer ser. Você quer dar a informação certa. Então vamos ver aqui. Estritamente falando. É quando você está sendo tipo direto. Cara, tipo, você quer dar a informação certa ali, né? Strictly speaking as misnomer. Misnomer. O que é isso aqui?
Misnomer.
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 Misnomer. A name that does not suit what it refers to, or the use of such a name. Então, um nome que não condiz ao que se refere, ou o uso de tal nome. O uso de tal nome não condiz com o que você se trata. Então aqui está falando que o silent cinema é um nome errado de se utilizar. Vamos ver por quê. For although films themselves were silent, the cinema was not. The showing of early films, particularly non-fiction, was often accompanied by a lecturer or barker, and in Japan there developed the remarkable institution of the benshi, who both commented on the action and spoke the dialogue. It was largely because of the benshi that silent film survived in Japan long after other countries had converted to sound. Universal throughout the silent cinema, however, was musical accompaniment, which ranged from improvisations on an out-of-tune piano to full orchestral scores by composers of the caliber, let's see,
Caliber.
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 Caliber. Então tem que, se fosse escrito por um americano, ia ser caliber. Caliber of Saint-Saëns, L'assassinat du duc de Guise, 1908. Ou Shostakovich, não, algo assim. New Babylon, 1929. Music was an integral part of the silent film experience. The final section of this part in British looks first at the extraordinary development of film music and its role in shaping the audience's perception before proceeding to an overview of what the silent cinema was like in its heyday in the 20s. Esse heyday é tipo meio que os tempos de ouro, se eu não me engano, tipo aqueles momentos mais fortes. Vamos ver aqui. The most successful or popular period of someone or something. Então, o momento mais de que estava mais estourando esse silent cinema. Okay, that's it. I'm quite tired now. Yeah, I got tired. Now finished here. I'm gonna finish here this speaking and reading. So I'm going to stop the recording here. Just the recording. So if you're watching on YouTube, see you. Give the like, right? It's important for me. If you give your thumbs up and you subscribe to my channel and stuff like that, right? So see you soon.